Hello, friends. Welcome back to Transcendent Astrology and Tarot. My name is Michelle Fondin. I'm an author, speaker, astrologer, and tarot reader. And welcome to my video on Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn. Encore, encore. This is it. This is the final exam. This is the final straw. This is the final lesson and graduation. I'm going to explain why I feel that this is such an important point in your life and in mine. If you do, stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I do tarot and astrology readings. You can book that at my website, michellefondinauthor.com. The planet Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn since January 24th of 2028. And Pluto spends about half of its time in retrograde motion. The planet Pluto was discovered in the 1930s. I forget the exact date, but it takes approximately 248 years to complete one cycle around the Zodiac. Pluto spends between 14 and 31 years per sign. Now, the reason for this is that Pluto's orbit is very irregular. It has a very irregular orbit, and that's why it's so vast between 14 and 31 years per sign. Given that the human lifespan does not extend at this time to 248 years, Pluto will only go into about 4 to 6 of your astrological houses in your lifetime. And that is why 29 degrees Capricorn, as we finish out this Pluto cycle in Capricorn that started in January of 2008, why it is so incredibly significant. On September 1st of 2024 at 6 p.m. Pacific time, Pluto will retrograde one more time into 29 degrees, 59 minutes of Capricorn until November 18th of this year. At that point, Pluto will re-enter into the sign of Aquarius at 0 degrees, where it will stay until approximately 2044. So Pluto will have spent approximately 20 years in the sign of Aquarius. This is significant. 29 degrees of any sign signifies the end, the cusp, moving into the next sign. And since Pluto is such a slow-moving planet, and because Pluto spends about half of its time in retrograde motion, it goes over the same degree points several times in the course of its transit. Let's look at 2023 and when Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn in 2023. The last time Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn was between December 19th of 2023 and January 19th of 2024. Then before that, it was June 11th, 2023 through July 26th of 2023. And the time before that, which was the first time that Pluto entered into 29 degrees of Capricorn, was February 11th of 2023 through March 22nd of 2023. It's really important for you to go back and remember what was happening in particular during those times at which Pluto was at 29 degrees of Capricorn for you. This happened 3 times, obviously, in 2023. It's already happened in January of 2024. And now between September 1st and November 18th of 2024, it's happening again. But this is the final straw, the final exam. It is graduation. It's Pluto asking you, have you learned the lessons that I've been trying to teach you since January 24th of 2008? Have you been listening to those lessons? Are you integrating those lessons? Have you gotten it this time? Those are the messages of Pluto. Now let's explore Pluto and Capricorn And because I study evolutionary astrology, we're also going to explore the oppositional point of 29 degrees Capricorn, which is 29 degrees of Cancer. Now, you may be thinking, this is too little too late, Michelle. We're already at 29 degrees. Well, let's just put it this way. When we look back, of course, hindsight is 2020. Now we're going to have about 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius. Now, if you had the knowledge of Pluto in Capricorn on January 24th of 2008, and you knew what to expect or you knew what to look for, things may have gone a little bit smoother for you. Maybe they wouldn't have, but maybe they would have gone just a little bit smoother for you throughout this entire process. So let's have a look at what the significance of Capricorn has meant for you. Furthermore, this is going to depend on which house Pluto has been transiting in your natal chart. For example, for me, Pluto has been transiting my 7th house for this entire time, since January 24th of 2008. That has to deal with one-on-one relationships. It has to do with one-on-one personal relationships, whether it's an intimate relationship, friendship, family relationship, business partnership or relationship. And it also is about enemies, one-on-one enemies, or those who are not necessarily working with you, but might be seemingly working against you. Pluto is about transformation. It is about life, death, and rebirth. The perfect example of this would be the phoenix rising from the ashes, like dying and rising from the ashes, or the butterfly going through its metamorphosis. In a more modern structure, as we think about modern day religions, it is truly Jesus Christ. Jesus died on the cross. It is said that he was dead for 3 days. And in fact, the Our Father, the ancient rendition of the Our Father that I used to say when I was a little girl, it states that Jesus descended into hell. Not the modern version that's post, I believe, Vatican II, but the older versions from the early 1970s was Jesus descended into hell for 3 days and then he rose from the dead. That is Pluto in a nutshell. It is dying, staying in that state of death, if you will, and rebirth or resurrection. It is also represented by the Hindu gods and goddesses of Shiva, creator and destroyer, and Kali, which is the feminine version of Shiva. There are many other deities and stories and mythological beings that can be mentioned here when it comes to Pluto. But for all intents and purposes, Pluto is about change and evolution as far as those deep-seated changes that cannot be repeated, meaning once it is destroyed, it is destroyed, it is done, it is dead, done, and over with. The only opportunity and choice is for a rebirth into something different. In evolutionary astrology, Pluto represents our individual soul and the evolutionary process of our individual soul. We must go through evolutionary changes in the soul's process as we go through the process of life, death, and rebirth. I want to read a little passage from Robert Hand's Planets and Transits concerning Pluto. And as we go through this video, please take into consideration Pluto and what Pluto is doing for you. It is extremely important that you recognize the inevitability of Plutonian change, which is built into the very structure of things and cannot be prevented. And you should not try to prevent it because it is a necessary stage in your evolution. All that you do, all that you will do is force the energies to build up until they are explosive. Then the inevitable changes come about disastrously. The one major lesson about Plutonian change is going with the flow, with the dissolution of things. This could be the dissolution of a marriage, the dissolution of a job, the dissolution of a career, the dissolution of a home or a place where you have lived for a very long time. It could be the dissolution of your body into failing health only to discover that you found a different way to restore your health. It could be the dissolution of the ego and letting go of that ego so that you may get in touch with your higher spiritual self. The pain that Pluto causes, because there's a lot of bad rap around Pluto. And I posted a video about 6 weeks ago about malefic planets, and I'll put that link right here so you can check it out after this video. But the problem with Pluto that many people conceive of Pluto being a bad planet to deal with, there are many astrologers that infuse a lot of fear about Pluto transits. I am not of this belief. Yes, it's transformative, and yes, it will require you to pivot and change. Sometimes quite unexpectedly, not as unexpectedly as Uranus changes, but sometimes it's something you may have been holding on to for quite some time. And when Pluto says it's time to let go, it's time to let go. This happened to me at the beginning of my Pluto transit in the 7th house. I was holding on to a marriage that I ultimately knew needed to go. And I was separated, but nothing was quite coming to a culmination to make the divorce happen. And in 2008, that permanent separation, then divorce, did happen. So that is an example of a Plutonian change. Once it is changed, you do not go back. Pluto is the underworld. It's everything that you might need to see that you do not want to see. Because death can be scary. Change can be scary. And we often want to hold on to structures, and stay with me because I'm getting to Capricorn in just a minute. But Pluto can cause us to have many fears around the impending changes that we know need to happen, that we know need to take place. And as Robert Hand mentioned in Planets in Transit, if you hold on to the things that must be destroyed through major changes, it will lead to disastrous results in your life. The only way to move through Plutonian changes is to let go, is to flow through the changes, accept the changes, move smoothly through the changes, and relinquish all need to hold on to a past that must be changed. Capricorn. This is why perhaps the last 16, 17 years since Pluto entered Capricorn in January of 2008 have been so challenging for you. Capricorn is all about structure. Capricorn is about rules, regulations, reality, hardcore reality. Capricorn is about show me the proof. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is about structure. It's also the father principle. So it's about structure, control, borders, something solid and seen, something proven. And when we think about the structures in our lives, it gives us a sense of security. It gives us a sense of stability. It's not freedom. Uranus is freedom. Saturn is obedience, structure, stability. It is an agreement with what has already been. Now, Pluto doesn't want to stay with what has already been. Pluto says if it's dead, done, and over with, it needs to change. If it's already decaying, it needs to change. There are many structures in your life that maybe have been decaying for a long time. And because Capricorn wants to hold on to the real, to the existing, to the structures that are already present, it does not let go easily. Wherever Pluto happened to be in your natal chart, according to the house and the placement, you may have been holding on to something for too long. For example, if Pluto has been in your 6th house since 2008, you may have noticed a couple of things, either with your day-to-day job, that has changed and transformed. Maybe you've been through 4 jobs since 2008. Or maybe you had been holding on to a job, and when January of 2008 happened, you lost your job. Maybe you've been through 4 or 5 different job changes since 2008. Since the 6th house has to do with health and wellness, maybe you've had some health challenges that have been plaguing you throughout. And it's more like Pluto's been urging you to change your habits, change your diet, change your lifestyle, work out more. And maybe there has been a lot of push-pull struggles surrounding this if you've been in resistance. If Pluto has been in your 2nd house of finances in Capricorn, Capricorn likes finances. Capricorn likes stability and finances and income and making sure that the structures are in place so that you can pay your bills and get things paid on time. Pluto might come in and say, you need to expand your salary, or you need to change your income structure, or you need to get more money. So it may have been very disruptive for you. Since 2008, if Pluto has been transiting your 2nd house of income and things, maybe you have found that you've been stretched beyond your means, and maybe things have gotten more expensive and you haven't been able to pay, so you've had to seek more income. And so there is this stretching into something that you may not feel that you've been ready for, but Pluto comes in to say, you are ready for this. You are ready for this change. You need to make this happen. Since Pluto moves so slowly through a sign, you are given several opportunities to move through the lessons that Pluto is here to offer to you. Now that we're at 29 degrees of Capricorn, it means that this is the final exam. This is Pluto asking you, have you learned all of the lessons that I have come here to teach you in the area of your chart where I am found? And as you look back, especially at 2023, where Pluto was already at 29 degrees Capricorn, what things were presented to you during those 3 times of transit over 29 degrees? Remember, February 11th through March 22nd of 2023, June 11th through July 26th of 2023, and December 19th through January 19th of 2024. What opportunities were you presented with to see if you had learned those lessons? And it's always about power, because Pluto is about power. And it's generally about being able to take back your personal power in that area of your life, to make an agreement to change and transform into something better, because Pluto always wants you to change and transform into something better. Think of the butterfly, think of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Think about decay. If something is decaying in your life and you're holding on to it, you're going to sink with the sinking ship. But if you're in agreement that you need to let go of the thing that is decaying, you can reach for something that is growing. Do you see? And as we move from a Capricorn into 0 degrees Aquarius, where Pluto has already been, 0 degrees Aquarius is going to give us a clue, or a few clues, into which lessons are going to be the main themes of Pluto in Aquarius. Now, before we pull some cards, what I would like to do is explore the oppositional point of 29 degrees Capricorn. The oppositional point of 29 degrees Capricorn is 29 degrees of Cancer. Cancer is all about the deeper emotions, feelings, the emotional world related to home and family, and where you have your root emotions. And the opposition point would represent where you might need to move toward to integrate your lesson. So as we think about 29 degrees of Cancer by house, obviously by sign, Cancer, as we think about this, we think about emotionally, how have I integrated this lesson of 29 degrees Capricorn? Because Saturn is non-emotional, the ruler of Capricorn. The moon rules Cancer. The moon is all about emotions, and it's also the mothering principle. Saturn is all about the fathering principle. So when we think about moving our energy, in order to get that last vestige of lesson, in order to have the final exam, we need to think about, what have I integrated on an emotional level? And that is probably the most important lesson that 29 degrees Cancer, the oppositional point to 29 degrees Capricorn, needs to teach you as Pluto is exiting this sign. I have never done this before, but I feel compelled to do this, and I will take by house, Pluto in house 1 through house 12, and we're going to get a couple of tarot cards representing each house. So if Pluto has been in your first house since 2008, here is the advice for you as you traverse 29 degrees of Capricorn. We've got the 5 of Cups. This is definitely about emotions. This is definitely about the feelings. The first house does represent the self. It represents yourself. This is about not wallowing in self-pity, not wallowing in shame, blame, or guilt. The lesson here is to take responsibility for your feelings and choose empowering feelings about yourself rather than wallowing in negativity about what has happened to you in your personal life, in your emotional life, in your sense of self-life. Let's see what else for those that have Pluto in their first house since 2008, now at 29 degrees Capricorn. Knight of Cups in reverse, unrequited love. Yeah, the sense of loss, the sense of grief, the sense of emotional baggage is likely to have had to do with the self versus being in a love relationship. This is interesting because the opposition of the first house is the 7th house, having to do with one-on-one relationships. Maybe you have been guarded throughout the time that Pluto has been in your first house, and you've been guarded. You've had this sense of self that you feel unsure, you have felt unworthy, you have felt that you are not necessarily emotionally available for relationships, perhaps. These are all the lessons that you've learned throughout this time. These are all the lessons that you have integrated throughout time. And I would say, if you have learned your lessons well, you've learned to take responsibility for your own feelings. And you've learned that if somebody, a lover, rejects you, that it's not about you. And I think that is the biggest lesson that you have taken through this time of Pluto in Capricorn. If Pluto has been transiting your 2nd house at 29 degrees Capricorn, here are your lessons that you have been integrating. The Hanged Man, resisting surrender, uncertainty. You know, you have actually been learning how to manage the uncertainty of income coming in at a consistent level. Maybe through this Pluto transit through your 2nd house, there has been an irregularity in income. And what you have learned is surrender. What you have learned is, I know that the income will come. Maybe it has been inconsistent. Maybe I have lost a job, maybe I found another job, but the income level, this is your paycheck, this is the income, the money coming in. I've learned to surrender. I've learned that things always work out. And if I worry about it, if I am resisting the changes that need to take place, then I am an emotional wreck. Yeah, I feel that the Ace of Swords, new ideas. So here's the thing. Maybe as Pluto transited through your 2nd house, you had generated new ideas for new sources of income. And so even though income may have been irregular during this time since 2008, second house, resources, you found new brilliant ideas, Ace of Swords, and those brilliant ideas led to maybe a second job, a third job, a side gig, passive income. And I feel like if that was you, you can pat yourself on the back for a job well done, really well done. Because if it created more ideas in you, if it generated even better ideas to stabilize your income, that was a wonderful lesson that you learned with Pluto going through Capricorn. Pat yourself on the back for being so much stronger and remembering those lessons, even as Pluto is exiting Capricorn and moving into Aquarius, which would be your third house. Okay, so here we go. Pluto in the third house at 29 degrees of Capricorn. What are the final lessons here? 10 of Coins, a family legacy. This could have to do with the childhood neighborhood, the childhood home. The third house really is about your immediate surroundings. Maybe the immediate surroundings that you grew up with, maybe the immediate surroundings around your parents. It has to do with something local. It has to do with short distance travel. It also has to do with things around the house, things with your siblings, for example. So I'm going to get another card because I really want to see what the family legacy has to do with. Third house, summer solstice. It says let go of control, having fun. So I feel like if there was something surrounding third house issues, either with siblings having to do with family legacy, the family home, the neighborhood you grew up in, something surrounding that hometown, the hometown feel of the surroundings, your neighbors, your friends growing up, your siblings around the hometown. If there was something to do with that, or having to travel back home to see your parents that still live in that hometown. Maybe they were aging, maybe they were ailing, maybe there were family fights between siblings as to who would actually take care of those aging parents, and saying like, I don't want to go back home. I don't want to go back to the hometown. I just don't like going back there. Or maybe there was fights surrounding that. The summer solstice tells me that I feel like throughout this time, there was a release of control surrounding anything having to do with siblings, anything having to do with things around the family estate, for example. And I'm not saying, it's weird because the third house is not inheritance. That would be the eighth house. But I have a feeling that there was something having to do with the childhood place where you grew up. Whether it was with aging parents or the siblings or the responsibilities regarding the siblings, the place where you grew up, or aging parents, it was kind of about learning how to manage things and have fun with it. Again, letting go of that sense of I need to control everything, or I just see it's about fighting with siblings. There may have been disagreements, arguments, not getting along. But I feel like that's like a huge lesson that you actually learned during this time of Pluto in Capricorn. Okay, so for those that have had Pluto in the fourth house since 2008, what's the final lessons, the graduation? We've got lunar eclipse and it says deep emotional cleansing, deep emotional cleansing. So the fourth house can represent the home. It can represent the mother. So it's really, the moon is associated with the fourth house. So I have a feeling that there was deep emotional cleansing having to do with your childhood and your mother in particular during this time since 2008. If Pluto is transiting your fourth house, let's see what else. Pluto transiting fourth house now at 29 degrees of Capricorn. We've got the King of Cups in reverse and it says emotional immaturity. Yeah, so if Pluto has been transiting your fourth house, This is all about you doing a lot of emotional cleansing of immature behavior that has kept you trapped in your childhood. It's behavior that has kept you trapped into feelings of being a child again and feeling powerless. And so if there have been arguments with your mother or your father regarding your independence, feeling powerful, feeling emotionally fulfilled and emotionally independent, those arguments have been around you reclaiming your personal power, which requires you to have emotional maturity. And maybe every time you talk to your mom or dad, you reverted back into that small child. And during this time, it's been a constant challenge because Pluto has provided you opportunities to interact perhaps even more with your mom or your dad, in that there have been triggers. Now that you are at the end of it at 29 degrees Capricorn, the lessons that you're needing to integrate from this is, I am responsible for my own emotions. It doesn't matter what happened to me as a child. Everything emotionally that happened to me as a child happened for me and not to me. And I can own that. I can now own my emotions so that I do not have to be triggered anymore when it comes to mom and dad, especially mom. Pluto transiting your 5th house now that Pluto is at 29 degrees Capricorn. Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn in the 5th house. 3 of Swords in reverse, overcoming sorrow. This is interesting because I mentioned 29 degrees of Cancer, how that's really about getting in touch with your deeper emotions. Overcoming sorrow is like, this is the end of being upset or sad. The 5th house is the house of pleasures, guys. It's the house of casual sex. It's the house of children. It's the house of creativity and playfulness. And I feel that if you have been feeling too serious, if you have not been playful with yourself, if you have had trouble, what I'm seeing is that some of you may have had trouble having children, becoming pregnant, having a pregnancy that has stayed during this time. Maybe there were some miscarriages that happened. What you have learned is to let go and heal and overcome and have hope for the future. We have the 3 of Wands in reverse, and it says lack of foresight. So another thing that you have overcome in the 5th house is thinking small. It means that you're moving into a higher octave of yourself where you're seeing bigger picture. So maybe during this time, you weren't thinking longer term. You were thinking for the house of pleasures, meaning you were thinking in the very short term. You were thinking for pleasure only without thinking for the longer term. That would be if you had thought about gambling too much and losing your money and not thinking about the longer term. In the sense of infertility that I was talking about earlier in the 5th house, is that thinking longer term was maybe thinking, look, if I relax and let go, maybe we can still have the opportunity to get pregnant. Or thinking longer term could be, all right, do I really need to have a biological child, or can I adopt a child, for example? So those are just a couple of examples, but I feel like there has been this sense of overcoming the short-term disappointments and being able to look at the bigger picture to go, I am allowed to have fun in the moment. I'm allowed to relax and have pleasure in the moment. And I can be responsible in my emotional life, even during this time where I'm having fun, even during this time where I might not be able to have children, or maybe I have too much responsibility and burden with children. But it's really about looking at the moment and the moments of pleasure and realizing that having fun, having pleasure, having joy in the moment does help with the bigger picture. it does help you to relax and move into your creativity rather than getting too caught up in the emotions of the moment. All right, so Pluto moving through your 6th house. Pluto's transit through the 6th house now at 29 degrees of Capricorn. We have Page of Cups in reverse, broken dreams. I feel like that's something that you have overcome, the broken dreams piece. And 6th house, Pluto, now at 29 degrees of Capricorn. What else? There are so many cards in reverse here. We have the Page of Cups, broken dreams in reverse, and we have the Page of Swords, playing mind games. I feel that this, because the 6th house is about your day-to-day routines, it's about your day-to-day job, it's also about your health. And Page of Cups in reverse, where it says broken dreams and playing mind games, I feel like the playing mind games was with yourself. The broken dreams here, I feel that if you have had starts and stops in your career since 2008, 6th house, Pluto, that you have felt like it will never work. And those are the mind games you've been playing with yourself. Just because Pluto has asked you to dissolve a certain career or a job, and it's not necessarily career, it could just be individual jobs. Just because Pluto has asked you to dissolve individual jobs, you have looked at that sometimes throughout this time with yourself saying, I'm just a failure. I'm just a failure. This will never work. Nothing ever turns out well for me with my jobs. And I really feel that you have turned this around. You have totally turned this around. That I know that just because a job layoff happens, it does not mean that I am incapable. It does not mean that I am not worthy. Now, this could have to do with your health as well. Maybe you were diagnosed with a health issue and you've tried different things. And when a couple different things didn't work, you started playing mind games with yourself and said, well, if I've tried a couple of things to regain health, I'm just going to give up now because it's never going to work. And I really believe that you have worked through this. You've worked through these issues of this doesn't mean that. Just because a job has dissolved does not mean that I am not talented. It just means that I haven't found the right fit yet. Just because I've tried a few different things to regain my health, it doesn't mean that I've failed. It doesn't mean that I'll be sick forever and ever, amen. It just means that I need to keep trying. And that's really 6th house. It's finding the fine details to be able to move forward. Okay, so now for the 7th house, Pluto in the 7th house since 2008, now at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Two of Cups. Now, as I mentioned, my lesson, 2 of Cups, one-on-one relationships. You have learned what a loving relationship now does look like. Before you didn't know, now you know. A loving relationship is an equal exchange of partners. It's not about one partner having domination over the other. It's not about manipulation and control. It's about a symbiosis between two people. Now, this doesn't have to be romantic. It usually is, but it doesn't have to be romantic. It could be one-on-one friendships, one-on-one partnerships. And it says companionships. It says mutual feelings. It says agreement, in sync. So I think through the dissolving of certain relationships during this time, through the difficulties of one-on-one relationships during this time, you have learned what healthy relationships look like. You have learned what in sync relationships look like. You may not be experiencing a lot of them yet, but you have certainly learned by the contrast of what you do not want, what you do not like, what an incongruent power dynamic looks like. And then 7 of coins in reverse, you've learned what a lack of growth in relationships looks like. And this is when I talked about the Plutonian decay, if you will. You have learned that a loving, healthy relationship grows and an unhealthy relationship stagnates and does not grow. And so you've learned, in order to maintain a healthy relationship, friendship, partnership, it needs to continually grow, to be in sync. Yes, we may grow at different levels in our partnerships, in our loves, in our friendships, but we do need to grow. We cannot just stagnate or it will fall apart and die. If Pluto has been in your 8th house, now at 29 degrees Capricorn, what is the final exam? What is the final lesson? Ace of Wands, a passionate start, new passion for life. So what I really like about the 8th house is that Pluto feels very at home in the 8th house. And the transformative qualities of Pluto does its best work in the 8th house because it feels very much at home. 8th house is about death, rebirth, transformation. It's about the occult. It's about inheritance. It is about physical death, usually if not the person. It could be the physical death of someone around you, but it does have to do with death and rebirth, just like Pluto. That's why they get along. So I feel like there was a restart, a reset button is what I am hearing. There has been a rebirth, a reset button for you somewhere in the arena of Capricornian themes for you as Pluto has moved through the 8th house in Capricorn. It's been something good for you. The rebirth, the reset button has actually been something really good for you. Let's see, what else? The 10 of Cups, yeah. You know, a lot of people, astrologers, in other words, really give the 8th house and Pluto a bad rap. But I feel like this reset button has led you to happiness, has led you to something really good, has led you to some cohesiveness in family, relationships with your children. There has been this restart, this hope that has come through that something was previously destroyed or dissolved, but the end result is something amazing. And I believe if you have lived through Pluto in your 8th house, and you are now at 29 degrees of Pluto in Capricorn, you are the one who is living to tell the tale of how magical a rebirth is, a Plutonian rebirth is. It's almost like you are a testimony. You are the truth of true Plutonian change. And you could give a testimonial about what you've been through since 2008. And you can say, look, I am here to tell my tale of how Pluto completely transformed this thing in my life, and I'm so happy now. And I love that for you, because Pluto's going through my 8th house in Aquarius starting November 18th. Pluto in the 9th house of Capricorn, now at 29 degrees Capricorn. All right, we've got 2. If Pluto has been moving through your 9th house, you've had a lot of change, Wheel of Fortune. You've had a lot of karmic change. I feel like you've had a lot of good luck too. The 9th house does represent good luck. It does represent events that kind of appear out of nowhere. But I do feel that there have been changes. Now, these changes have not been bad. Queen of Wands. Queen of Wands is about something good. It's about passion. It's about manifestation. And I do feel that as Pluto has moved through your 9th house, there have been a lot of manifestations happening. Now, These manifestations may have caused some upheaval in your life. Let me give you an example. If somebody wins the lottery, that is a fortunate event typically, but it is also a major upheaval in somebody's life as the result of a manifestation. Do you get it? If, for example, you had the great fortune, wheel of fortune, you had the great fortune of getting a job in Hong Kong, for example, and you've never moved out of your home country, and this job was paying an apartment and paying you $250K a year, and you had all these amenities and all these wonderful things happening, that is good fortune. But it is also a huge upheaval because the ninth house can also represent moving abroad or living abroad. So I feel for you, one of the major things that you have learned is that good luck is great. Unexpected good fortune is wonderful, but it also comes with a tremendous amount of upheaval and change. And I feel like that is something that you have learned through this is like, all right, good luck is great, but I have to be comfortable with major change as a result of that. Pluto moving through your 10th house. If Pluto has been moving through your 10th house of career, 10th house of public image, 10th house of reputation, 10th house of being seen, let's see, what was the major lesson that you have been learning throughout this time? The Devil card, strings attached. So I think one of the major lessons that you have learned is to not get caught up with the opinions of others. Now, your reputation sometimes is pending on the opinions of others, but what you have had to learn is not to be attached to the likes on social media, to not be attached of what others say about you, to not be attached is exactly how you're seen by 100% of people all around the world all the time. Because everybody has a different opinion of you, and it has nothing to do with you. The Devil really is about being too attached to what other people say and do. It's like being a puppet that is attached to strings. And what you have learned is to become detached from the opinions of others, from how you are perceived or seen. What matters most is how you see you. You've got the Ace of Swords, clarity, awareness, sharpness. I believe, and it's also about truth. What I believe you've learned through Pluto in your 10th house is how to see the truth of who you are. And the truth of who you are has very little to do with the opinions of others. It has very little to do with the exact way in which you are seen out in the world. That it has more to do with how you perceive you. And how you perceive yourself will then reflect onto the world. And you will not care at all. And that's what you've probably learned, is you will not care at all what others think of you. Pluto moving through the 11th house of networks, groups, friendships, social connections, social groups. So what has been the lesson if Pluto has been transiting your 11th house? 8 of Wands, gaining momentum. I feel like what you've learned is being pulled in many different directions by many different people and many different things, social engagements, business engagements, being pulled by many different groups, society. And that's something that you have learned, is that there is a power in that, but it can also create too much energy. Let's see, what else have those who have had Pluto in the 11th house learned as the final exam approaches? Justice, fairness, balance, doing what is right. I feel like this is a self-check, the Justice card. the Eight of Wands being pulled in so many directions by so many different people and things and groups and friends. And it's not necessarily bad. It really isn't bad. The 11th house is about being social. But I feel like justice is telling you that you have figured out how to do things right. You have figured out how to moderate and balance the energy between the various networks, groups. I just feel like you've learned what is fair and what is not fair for your own life. You have learned doing what's right. And maybe there have been groups and networks and social media groups even that have kind of pulled you into different areas, different directions. And it's happened like so fast with so much information and so much communication going around that you have truly learned how to pick your groups and pick your friend groups wisely. Wisely, even though you are being pulled into so many different directions. You have learned to maybe pare down your friend groups while Pluto has been in your 11th house, to maybe get rid of some social connections and social groups. And then you learn to build that up again with those that felt the best for you, the most balanced, the most fair, the most just. And that's something that was a hard lesson for you to learn, but it's something you've had to learn nevertheless. And now you're able to be more discerning when it comes to your social life, social connections, and groups. If Pluto has been transiting your 12th house, oh my goodness, which is really about isolation. It is about endings, but it is also about spiritual discovery. It's about finding your soul and getting in touch with your soul. And it can be a lot about meditation. It can be a lot about dissolving the boundaries of the self into the higher spiritual self, into unity consciousness. So we have got union, and that's really what the 12th house is about union between you and you, between your ego self, your personality, and between your higher spiritual self. That is union. That is 12th house. And I believe that this is a love connection with yourself. That is what you've learned. And when we talk about the death and the rebirth, maybe there has been a huge death and rebirth of yourself through this process since 2008. It's almost like I don't even know who I was prior to 2008. I'm so different now. Pluto has caused me to transform and change my view of myself and my life, and I'm so different now. You may have gone through a major spiritual awakening with the Lovers card, because the Lovers can represent healing within the self. It can also be union with someone else, but we're talking about 12th house stuff, which I really believe could be like the ego death moving into your higher spiritual self. Let's see what else. We've got the Queen of Wands, which is really empowering. It is empowering. And I believe combined with the Lovers cards for the 12th house lessons is that you have learned union with yourself, with all the parts of you that make you you, your ego, your intellect, your personality, your emotional self, your physical self, and your spiritual self. You found the union with you and Queen of Wands. Now you feel so much more powerful because of it. You may have suffered through a lot of isolation, especially during a spiritual awakening. But in the end, as we reach 29 degrees Capricorn, if Pluto has been moving through your 12th house, you're coming out of this knowing who you are and really knowing who you are and liking who you are, because you feel so different now. You're like, I thought I was one person. I was really attached to my body, for example. I was attached to my ego. I was attached to my wants, desires. I was attached to who I thought I was growing up, and now I'm not attached to any of that. And I really know who I am from a higher spiritual perspective. And that is a beautiful lesson to learn. So I hope this was helpful as you're really thinking about the past 16 and a half years and pondering over how Pluto has transited Capricorn for you. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with others who are interested in astrology. And thank you so much for your support on my YouTube channel. You can buy one of my 11 published books. You can book a reading with me, and I will see you in the next video.